My name is Layla Swart. I am a 32-year-old filmmaker. I produce and I edit, and I own a company called Bubblegum Entertainment. And we focus mainly on feature films, and now we've just recently moved into sort of high-end television. I studied film in 2006 at the University of Cape Town. I think I'd always wanted to be involved in the film industry in some way, or be a storyteller in whatever way that I could find. And at university, I really sort of focused on writing and directing. Editing was like a natural progression from that, because I thought to myself, I need a technical skill, you know. The industry back then also was even worse, even harder to get into. And I figured I need a technical skill so that I have something that people can pay me to do, you know, and that I don't have to prove myself, which I felt directing would take a bit of time with. So I became an editor, and I graduated in 2009. I started working for kind of industry stalwarts, like I cut films for Akina Motoso and Rihad Desai, and learned a lot in that process. But at the age of around 25, I was like, okay, I'm ready to make my own film. And I tried very hard to find a producer to do that. And through that journey, I think I realized how incredibly lacking the world of producers were, and good producers and creative producers and producers who understood the vision of a director. And having no success in finding a producer for it, I decided, you know what, I'm going to become a producer, and I'm going to become the best producer in the country, because I really believe in creatives and the power of story, and I understand what it's like to have this vision and have this story and not be able to know the avenues or channels that you can take to make it. I think really everything that we do has always been a journey of self. I've always looked at it like that. I think specifically in an industry like the film industry, where it is very cutthroat, it is very duplicitous sometimes, there are a lot of problems, it's very hard for a woman, it's very hard for a woman of color. There are all these things that kind of are put in place that should hold you back in a sense. But what I've really learned is that it's been a grappling with myself and how I see the world and how I see my place in the world and how I confront or tackle the obstacles that are put in front of me. In 2017, when I opened Bubblegum Entertainment, I thought, this is never going to work. I couldn't see how I'm going to actually achieve this and make money out of it and grow my company, because it is a very, very tough environment. It really is difficult in terms of a business sense, you know. But I think what we've really managed to do is just persist. And that persistence has paid off, I guess. The series that we just completed, which is Blood Psalms, which I produced alone, is the largest 100% local television series ever made so far. And that kind of responsibility, or that growth, even though it's been incredibly difficult, is also a measurement, I think, of power of staying the course and the power of deciding what you want to be and continuously improving on that thing. Editing for me has always been something I revere. I do believe now, even more than before, that it's such a crucial part of the filmmaking process. I do think it's where the film is made. And I've always loved that silence and quiet of being alone and being in control of the material, which is ironic because I feel like producing is the complete opposite of that. It is where you interface with everybody, where you're everybody's parent, where you're everybody's person to bitch with. But I think there's a term for it. Very few people have that combo. It's called predator. And I kind of like that, so I was like, yeah, I'm a predator. But producing came out of a necessity to facilitate or be a conduit for the creative work that I saw was not happening. That's how I became those two things. Producing really is taking a concept, packaging it, and knowing or assessing who is the right person to take that package to. And then going through hell to raise the finance for that particular package and arguing for it, arguing on behalf of the director, because often money people don't understand creative vision. So it's really being the connection between those two and trying to speak it in the business language and still remain true to the integrity of the artist. And then on a day-to-day, it's mainly making sure everybody's there, hiring the people, going through the casting process, looking after the set, making sure they're up on time, making sure that they understand that every creative decision has a cost implication, And usually every day it's about that. It's like, okay, but now we need a real lion. And I'm like, that's gonna cost this much versus a VFX lion, which costs this much. And yeah, so it's making those kinds of decisions on the daily, looking for cash flow because all of these funders don't give the money at once. Finding the resource to sustain yourself when you don't come from money or don't have a capital behind you is the biggest challenge for me as a producer. I worry every Monday about how people are gonna get paid on Friday. And it's very stressful, that part of it, because I think I've come from being a crew member. So the way crew look at a producer is very different. If you can't afford to pay them on a Friday, they're like, this woman is stealing the money, definitely. So I've learned to have to try and adapt to being this producer figure in a new cinematic South African space, because I think we are young and we are pioneering and we are redefining how those spaces work. Those spaces have always been very toxic, they've always been very masculine. Film in itself has always taken this sort of army kind of regimented structure where there's a hierarchy and people feel bad and people treat other people who are lower than them badly. So I've really made it a thing to change that kind of environment and really foster something like a family, a creative family. It would make me proud if people say that Yellow Bun Entertainment felt like that. Before, when I was an editor for other people's work, I suppose a lot less insight than I have now, editing the work that I produce. I can't be as angry as I normally would before. I'd be like, why did they shoot it like this? Now I completely understand why they shot it like that, because they didn't have this and they couldn't afford that. So for me, it's kind of like a very safe space. The producing aspect puts me in a very vulnerable space where I'm constantly open to criticism. I'm constantly responsible for every single thing that happens on a set. And sitting with the footage afterwards is very sacred, I think. It's the time when I can really reflect and take everything that I learned from the journey in the production and all the emotions that I got from the cast, because I know them intimately, obviously, and infuse that into the work of the cut. For me, cutting has always been less technical and more about rhythm and energy and spirit. And sometimes you'll find like your intuition as an editor just gets honed more and more and more, that you could actually blindly make a cut somewhere on a timeline and then watch it and it works. So I love the magic of what editing is. It's very precious to me. I feel like my producing is my philanthropy. It's my gift back to the creatives that I admire so much, and editing is mine. I'd say every single moment has accelerated my career, specifically the failures. But there have been like certain benchmark accolades that I think have been amazing. Our first feature film that I produced and edited was called Sew the Winter to My Skin, which was South Africa's entry into the Oscars in 2019 for the best foreign language film. And then the second feature film I produced was called Knuckle City, which was South Africa's entry into the Oscars in 2020. So having that kind of record has been quite affirming for me, and I think that what it really has taught me is to appreciate that I'm on the right path, and I think we've been very blessed. Every project that we've made has racked up a lot of SAFTAs, a lot of African Movie Academy Awards. It's been received differently, but very well internationally in festivals. So I think, as I said in the beginning, for me it's always about how you deal with yourself and your own journey and how it pushes you more and more and more. So those moments or successes, even doing Blood Psalms, is very important to me, because our whole ethos in terms of the work that we do is that we understand the power of the image and how it helps you build identity and how it helps you interpret yourself. So our work has always been very focused on elevating that, elevating the image of the South African narrative. So for me, I'm just proud and honored to be a part of that, really. And lucky to be where I am now and be in the space that I am in this particular industry, because the platform is so wide and open. It is the right time to pioneer, and I'm glad to be around for that. Ironically, the success has just been able to pay rent in a really nice home and not worry about money. I think I've grown up worrying about money. I was born in the Cape Flats in an area called Athlone, and every day was too much of a struggle, I think. I mean, I didn't have it like terribly bad. I was very blessed and lucky, but it was not easy. The future was never easy. The future was never something that you didn't have to worry about. So for me, success is A, changing the game, hopefully inspiring other people to do it, hopefully inspiring the stakeholders of this industry to take it more seriously so that it's not as hard, because it shouldn't be as hard as it is. But mostly it's, yeah, not worrying about the future. So many barriers exist in the film industry, and then at the same time, if you want to be philosophical about it, there are no barriers, and we've kind of, as a society, put them there. But the film industry still struggles with transformation in every sense of the word. From what the narratives are about, from who's cast in them, from who's directing them, from who's writing them. And trust, I think there's little trust in newcomers. There's a kind of an established status quo and gatekeepers. And it's beautiful because I think the world as a whole, that kind of thing is crumbling fast. It's like the age of Aquarius and everything is rapidly changing, and I feel like our sector will experience that change as well. But yeah, there's still sexual harassment, there's still prejudice, there's still unnecessary reliance on the white male narrative, white male view, white male perspective. And these are not new issues. I think we've been fighting them for centuries even. Yeah, we just keep on fighting them. So I feel like the more we take up space, the more opportunities we have to give each other. Everything excites me about the landscape in South African film and television right now. I think that it always has to kind of get to a breaking point before newness emerges, and we really have gotten to that breaking point where the old ways just aren't working anymore, where the government is being held accountable for the funds that they promise and don't deliver, or the lack of support they give the sector. This sector in 2018 was the third highest grossing sector for the economy next to agriculture and mining. But still, the arts are not sort of taken seriously or prioritized. So I feel like we're all cut full and we're all tired and we're all fighting, and that's a good space to be in. I think that this continent is one of the biggest targets internationally now for stories and content creation. So I think that's exciting. I think we need to educate ourselves as to how to not be taken advantage of in that process, but I think we have everything. I went to LA, I had the fortunate experience for the Oscar campaign, and I thought to myself, this feels like it's amazing, but there's nothing new that can exist here because it's so full. Coming from a background of being a crew member, I think there are a lot of producers and directors now who enter this field without ever having worked as an underling, I guess. And there's such a benefit to understanding what everybody does. So I think that knowing exactly what a DOP does versus what an editor does versus what the gaffer does, you know, having that like solid understanding just makes you a much better, more consummate leader, I think. So in terms of being a producer, I've always tried to really understand from the technical aspects to the emotional strain of every discipline on the set. I wish that I understood that it was a business and that there is a weight and a responsibility to money. Having come from like an artistic background, I think for me it was always about the art. And then you get a couple of million and you realize how much responsibility that couple of million is and how much you're taking from other possible places where that millions could go, you know? And then having to report back to the people who gave you those millions is incredibly distressing. And I don't think we were ever prepared for that. So as much as I've always been the fighter for the arts, now I have to sober up and be like, how do you prove that what you are, your vision is worth all these many millions, you know, because it's an expensive business. So I wish that I'd learned more about the economics of filmmaking and the business of filmmaking. Similar to any other craft, you really need to spend time on it and research it. There are many funds that I, for example, have accessed because I've done the application correctly. 90% of people don't do applications correctly or don't know where to access these applications. I mean, it's something that I'm working on in my own capacity as well with the producers' organizations and things like that in terms of making that information more accessible. But what I really think it is training yourself to understand how your vision or your artistic project fits into the world and where its place is. Is it a Netflix thing? Is it a thing that's supposed to premiere at Sundance? Is it an experimental film that the Germans would love? Like understanding what your aim is and then learning how to put that into money, because money is the only thing that enables you to create your vision, I think, as close to as what it is in your head as possible. So information is everything, but also being a bit obsessive about information is important. Being OCD, spending hours and trying to bridge the gap between what makes a dream and what makes a dream real. I think it's about building yourself, understanding what your brand is. Brand is a very personal thing, and there are steps to go in the direction of a specific brand. If you want to win a Palme d'Or at Cannes, then you're going to make a film that is festival accessible, that is experimental, that is those things. If you want to be the director of Transformers one day, then there's a very different path to take. My advice personally is to open a company. Even if you're not going to use it, just open it so that it's there and that you have somewhere to put your IP, somewhere to put whatever you make and work, and it's housed under something. And then chart your path, because I think I've realized more and more that it's not a special thing to be brilliant. It's actually just something that you've put time in, you've made a choice. Making a decision is first and foremost the most important thing. As a director, knowing what you want is the most important thing. So knowing what you want is something I'd say cultivate early on. I started cutting when I was 21. I'm a really good editor now, no matter what, because I've been doing it for over 10 years, you know? And I'll be even better at 40. So I'm going to be better than somebody who's starting right now. So the benefit of time and the benefit of practice is absolutely invaluable. If you make your first feature at 23 years old, it's not going to be great probably, but by the time you're 30, you are going to be such a good filmmaker. If it's something that you're passionate about, do it as often as possible. Don't wait, don't dream about it. Do it, make a bad film on a 5D camera, because the next year you're going to make a better one. And that film is going to go into a festival. Once that's done, people will fund you. It's very ABC equals. I think I do the work that I do because I'm trying to understand who I am and where I come from. And I think that the only way my mind has been able to figure that out is to give the platform of dissecting humanity and humanity's narratives through this medium. And I think that most people who are drawn to the arts or film or content creation are on a similar quest, I think, to understand themselves. And through the work, try and get to know themselves a little bit better by interfacing with humanity a little bit more. So I think that for me, it's about the power of story. There's a quote that said, "He who tells the story rules the world." And I think I've seen that in my experience of life, and I think that it's time that the kingdom changes. Timing, mostly. I think that another very crucial lesson that I've learned is that there is no good or bad idea. There is no good or bad project, and there's not necessarily a good or bad film. But what there is timing. And if you get the timing right of what you're trying to say with your story, in the sense of where the world is at, where the stars are aligned and everything, then it's going to be important. So I don't think that the brilliant film of 1999 is going to be the same brilliant film of 2001, even though they're the same film. So for me now, looking at projects, it's about timing, and has he hit it on the mark in terms of saying what needs to be said right now. Amy Jafta and Ephraim Gordon, they have a company in Cape Town, and they've been consistently churning out new content from feature films to television series. And I just think that they are working in a very difficult environment, because I think Cape Town is very tough. And they are young and they're exciting. There's a director who's also an actor called Richard Lukunku, whose short film I produced this year. Definitely think he's somebody to watch out for. His vision is very different and very rare. I think Khalpi is one of them. I think she's on the precipice of just redefining the cinematography space. But I just feel like there's a new generation coming up that is really, really, really free of a lot of the baggage that my generation carried. And they're just expressing themselves, man. So it's a very exciting time.